Hi guys, welcome to Elevate Procurement Dialogues. I'm your host, Lerato Sebata. In this podcast, guys, we are all about talking inspirational leadership, how procurement started and the journeys that we've all traveled to get to where we are. And we have a privilege to interview some of our leaders that we've seen them win in the game. And today I have one of, I call the OG of supply chain, Mr. Kamogelo Mampane. Welcome.
Okay.
How are you, sir?
Rona.
Please do introduce yourself for some people who don't know who you are.
Kamogelo Mampane. A lot of things we'll be talking about them today, but really I just love this profession, and that's why I'm here.
I mean, you started as an electrical engineer.
Yes.
And today you are?
Call me a professional, a supply chain professional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I met you at Supply Chain Awards.
Yes.
And you hold the title, the Chairman of Supply Chain Council.
Pan-African Supply Chain Council.
Absolutely. You started as an electrical engineer, and I just want to know your journey of what led you to be where you are today.
Well, similar to many people in supply chain and many chief supply chain officers today, supply chain was never our career of choice.
Yeah.
So we really got into this profession somehow by accident. So my story started with, as a young engineer, my very first job. We were doing projects in rural villages, especially in the Northwest and some of the Limpopo villages. And in there, we assisted, we were supporting small businesses to build and renovate the structures that they have, starting from schools, primary schools, high schools, middle schools, community centers. And of course, there were big construction like the building of the stadiums. So very soon, one started supporting small businesses. And of course, at that time, 1996, one was not talking about SME development.
And you also probably do not know what that's that.
No, of course. My role as a young engineer was to support them to build good projects, to ensure that they know how to cost the projects. And during the project, we did project management to ensure that they stick to the timelines, the quality that we want.
Yeah.
And that's how we started. One never understood what this word called supply chain. I'll tell you later where the change happened. But yeah, basically that was my career. So one of the other things that we did outside building and supporting small businesses, my dad used to go to different communities in townships, in rural villages, to support communities to build community centers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that entailed that they needed to plan for a weekend to build the structure. So they will have to source materials, equipment, and the services and professionals to come on a Saturday morning. On Sunday morning when they leave, the structure is ready. The roof, toilets are flashing, electricity, everything is in. My role was, of course, I was supporting my dad. So later on in my life, when I applied for a job in 1998, I found myself in an interview with about 8 engineers.
8?
Electrical engineers, civil, you name it. After an hour of an interview, Lerato, they say to me, what else can you tell us about yourself? So I realized that they are not interested in my electrical engineering.
Yeah.
I thought I was a very good electrical engineer. And I thought I told them good stories, but
Clearly
they were not that. Of course, these people were in the army, most of them.
Okay.
And they have 30, 40, 50 years experience, and here's someone with only 2 years experience.
Sure.
So then the thought came that says, but tell them about what you are doing with your day.
Like, I'm buying this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that.
After I told him there was an engineer from Zambia. The chief engineer at that time was called Dani Barnard. It was Menir Dani Barnard. He didn't believe me. So when I said, we bring all the materials, the equipment, the services, the skills. And by the way, when we leave, people are empowered with the skills that they need to take care of the structure.
Okay.
Because you know the issues that we have. We build the structures. After 2 years, 3 years, the structure falls down because of lack of maintenance. And people don't even have the skills to maintain the beautiful structures that they have. So he says, no, that's not possible. Fortunately,
Yeah.
one of the engineers from Zambia says, I've seen such a thing. I've seen a similar project happening, and not once, in Zambia.
Wow.
And his answer was, we want people like you. But then he says to me, which really caught me by surprise, he says, will you be happy to join the infrastructure department in supply chain?
That's when we started knowing the word supply chain.
And I heard the word. So what do you do? Someone says,
yeah, of course, he's figured it out.
So of course, that's what I said. I said, yes, of course, I hope it will help me to get to know the company quite well. And that's how I got in.
So you started in the technical space,
In the technical space.
So you can actually draft statement of work.
Of course.
You have a proper experience, because that is very rare coming from someone in supply chain. So I just want to know now, since you were exposed to that type of environment and then you started working, when was the time you realized this is a pivotal moment for me to start making an impact in supply chain?
Joining infrastructure department at that time, my responsibilities was to supply mainly materials for the infrastructure from Tabazimbi to Richards Bay, including Maputo corridor. And very quickly I realized that because we had to order material from all international suppliers, local, and we also had to understand their production lines. Once a year, all the teams, all the engineering discipline within the organization will come together to put plans for the next 2-3 years. And in there, they will ask questions like, we want to, and for example, because this is a railway line, so they want to block maybe about 1 kilometer of a railway line to do maintenance at a certain time. And once it's blocked, they need to run with that project until a certain time, because the train is coming and it must move when it gets there.
Sure, yeah.
So the material must be available on time for the closure of the line. If you miss that closure of a line by a second...
So you applied the just-in-time principle.
So exactly for that. So then one realized that, hang on, what is this thing that is called supply chain? And that are so integral to the planning of the organization.
Yeah.
Both operationally, for capital expenditure, and of course for strategic planning as well.
Were you driving savings then? Was it a thing, or it was not yet a realized thing?
Well, working with engineers, saving is not in their dictionary.
They want the best.
Absolutely. Of course, then finance will say, but they don't have money for that. But obviously finance cannot engage with the engineers and say, but do you have an alternative material? That's our job. That's what we did. So we'll go out, look for alternative material. And of course, because they will also share their plans with us, we'll go out and working together with our suppliers at the time to develop new products. And especially where they will realize that, for example, they have a breakage at a certain point. Why do we have such...
It must have been a fun work, eh?
It was fun, but...
Even the privilege to also talk to OEMs.
Yes, no, absolutely. And of course, getting to understand the production lines of suppliers, that was very, very important.
So do you think that was the turning point for you?
That was for me the turning point. And of course, at that time, we were sent to what was called an African University, RAU, at the time. And there was no supply chain. We did, or the course that I attended was international transportation.
Okay.
Because that's what it was available.
Yeah, it was before it named logistics. Yes.
So that also became a big turning point in my life, because we had international people telling us about how they run logistics.
Yeah.
So you go for a transport diploma, but you end up with logistics. So that created a lot of confusion for me. Of course, we were not the actual people that eventually did the purchase orders. But later on, in early 2000, we started with this thing called the purchase orders. See, my language keeps on growing.
But this is the thing I find very remarkable about your journey, is because you started with literally from the inception of seeing the growth of this profession. The name change, the terminologies, the digitization, innovation, councils being formed and many other bodies. And which leads me then to a place where I do want to ask you, when you were the head of ICT, how did that come about? Because it does seem like it's a bit difficult to, grow in corporate.
For me, research has always been something that I love doing. Development has always been, and of course, as I said before, that even in my engineering times, I found myself developing, and not just myself or people around me, but even entities that were working, so the entire ecosystem.
Okay.
So the organization that I started working for was quite heavy in IT. And of course, at the time, they never had the strategic sourcing. So we were brought in to implement strategic sourcing in the organization. And this came, in actual fact, maybe if I take a little bit back, in 2011, we signed an MOU with an organization that is called the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. The main reason of that MOU was to professionalize the industry.
Yes.
Now, in government procurement, people, as you know, at the time, they were just paper pushers.
Yeah. It was more administrative role.
It was really admin.
Yeah.
All the work happens elsewhere. The paper, everything, the price, everything is written. And what you are told is press the button and out comes a banana. That's all what we did. But because there was huge investment that was being done, especially in the country, in the IT space, we had to go deeper and research and find out what other countries are doing in this space. And I'm not an IT person, but because we love research, we love talking to people that are actually the producers of this IT things and IT companies.
So you found yourself in that position.
We found a gap. And we worked together with our ecosystem, especially our suppliers, to develop new products. And that's when one got introduced into category management.
So now, since you started leading people and realizing, I actually have a position of impact and influence, what then made you decide I want to now be part of the board? I mean, you've been part of a couple of boards, SAPICS, and then there's South African, there's another one you were, SOE?
Yeah, the state-owned. So I really had a privilege of leading the state-owned enterprise procurement forum.
That must have been so nice.
As a CEO as well.
Yeah.
And of course, and that's when we signed the MOU with the Chartered Institute of Procurement.
That's when at that time, because we then have the leveraging power to impact and influence from the South African
throughout the public sector in the country. And of course, that led to us, me being invited to serve on the board of the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. And as I said, the main aim was to professionalize the industry. To give procurement people the new skills that they need to deal. And at the time, there were a lot of infrastructure projects that we were dealing with in the country. I mean, it was 2011. You can imagine 2010 preparing for the 2010 and all these other projects that were taking place. Procurement people, building infrastructure, it's completely a different mindset.
So without being too technical, I know someone who's out there listening to this conversation will say, but how do you do it? How do you just become head of department? How do you just join a board? How do you get appointed to these things? Because it does seem a bit too far-fetched, how?
Love what you do, Sebata, just like you, right? If you really love what you do, if it's just ticking of the box, you never learn. I mean, you have people that spend 20 years in organization, but they have only 2-year experience, been repeated a few times.
Yeah.
Because they never learn. So in my mind, and everywhere in any organization where I worked, we never wanted to repeat the same mistake twice.
Okay.
Where we had a challenge with a client or a department that we serve, having challenges, we'll regroup as a team and we try to understand their plans, sometimes even better than them, especially the product and services that they required, that they wanted us to procure.
So then you would say, having the passion to learn, to grow within what you're doing will afford you the opportunities that you now can take on.
Can become boring. In the past, we always used to say, from the back room to the boardroom, right? But once you get to the boardroom, it can be a very boring seat because you then realize that, but what value am I adding when I'm here? People never ask you to contribute, right? Just because maybe legislation says you must be there or for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are there because of your actions, you will constantly contribute towards whatever objective that the organization have. But that needs you to go deeper and learn and understand everything that comes to your table before you put it to the next.
So someone who can say to you and challenge you, well, I've been learning. I even have my master's. I even have my MBA. But I didn't get the opportunities there. What do you do? What do you do?
That for me, it's a real challenge. And I must say, if it sounds controversial, please, it's okay.
Yeah.
I really hired people because of their qualifications from university.
Mm-hmm.
Even now in my own organization.
Still hire people who are qualified.
I never hire people because of their qualification.
Okay.
It's a conversation.
Yeah.
We always have a conversation.
Yes.
And if you're not a cadre that is willing to learn, who's willing to go deep, unfortunately, you will never grow. You might get into the positions because of whatever other reasons, but it becomes a very lonely journey.
Yeah, right.
And the position that you're in, if you go back and you realize, but I didn't add any value. If the strategy of the company is published and you realize, hang on, there's nothing that I did to create this document.
Yeah.
If the results are published, if companies' results are published, and you look at this annual report and you don't see any contribution of supply chain, then why are you there?
So that must take you a personal awareness of some sort, if I would say, to decide, well, what am I actually doing here? How am I coming in at work, leaving at 5, and then it's the end of the year, I've made so much. What have I actually done? One of the things that drives me is results. I just like to see output. And if I see an output or results, then it does, drive me to actually start doing something. If I don't have anything I can measure as a form of success or success criteria, or, okay, you've done this, you've seen that. And that's one thing I appreciate about procurement, right? You can see and quantify what you've actually done. Mara, if you're just taking the same mountain, it does get a bit boring.
Let me give you an example. What you're saying is absolutely right. So we once went to an ESCO meeting, and at the time, the CIO says, the COO, the Chief Operating Officer says, savings are not my priority. This is the CEO of a large organization. Here we are as supply chain people, we're calculating the savings. Right?
Yeah.
And probably is about 20% or 30% of your scorecard. And the CEO says, it's not my priority. What do you do? So you have to think differently. Right? So we had to go back with the team and say, what can we do? Because the COO says, this is not my priority. Right? So it doesn't matter where you are. You have to find out what are the priorities of an organization. So this organization's priority was revenue growth. So we had to come up with projects that support revenue growth, not savings.
Yeah. And obviously then, you might just end up getting it.
Of course. So we ended up, at the end of the year, when we see they publish the annual report, we were very happy to say that billion.
We were part of that.
That came in. We were part of it. We actually drove the strategy for that. So that's really requires that, supply chain cadre must really think differently about their work and the impact that they have, not just for their own organization, but the communities as they serve.
I think it's quite important for one to sometimes just take a deep dive and just think about your career. If you don't take a pause, you might find yourself just going on, and you don't realize where my time is going. And I've been in the same position for some time, right? I just want to quickly jump into the other part of your journey, which includes you writing a book. I find that so inspirational. I mean, it's so hard just to write notes. What more if I'm writing a book? Can you just share a little bit about that? What is the name of the book? Where do you find it?
So because, of course, we love development and we love guiding people. So we wrote, there's a book which people can find on LexisNexis.
Okay.
Which I wrote is more like a guide on supply chain from cradle to grave. So this helps you as a professional For example, if you want to know what is a sourcing strategy,
Okay.
you go to the LexisNexis book. It will show you. It will first define what is a procurement strategy, give you examples, and also linked in other areas, for example, under contract management with case laws that are here, that are available in the country. Yes. So it's really more like a guide. You also get templates that you can use, whether from issuing of
RFPs,
contract management, SLAs, certain clauses that we think are important, especially for different categories. So it's available if you go to LexisNexis and you look for a supply chain compendium, that's where you'll find.
So for those that are starting in the profession and may not have the privilege of someone mentoring them on the job, they can get a hold of that, and that will help them as a blueprint, show you how.
Absolutely. Even those that have been that have some experience.
Yeah.
If you're looking for templates, guidelines, and case law, I think it's a very good book that one can use, and it's only available online, of course. So
nice. So, what inspires you to write these articles? I've read a couple of the articles that are on LinkedIn, and those that are also published by third parties, the media, and stuff. What has really been an inspiration for you to write those?
I love life.
Okay.
I love people. And because I love life, and we see challenges every single day. And so when we find new solutions, it's not just good to keep quiet about it, to be silent about it. The good work as well that we're seeing that people are doing, we also get inspired to write about it. So always when there's a new technology, new advancement in supply chain, new stories that are coming and going in research, speak to people about it. But also we try to influence the industry as well.
Okay.
Because writing, that's what it does. I find that because I also love research.
Are you a book reader?
Yes, I love
That's written so many. Did you finish your books? Let's just start there. Because sometimes people read, but they don't finish their books. I'm one of them.
No, my very first book I'll never forget.
Yeah.
I write what I like.
Okay. Good.
So I do finish my books.
All right. No, thank you so much. Now, I want to jump onto the most exciting part of where you are now, which is the Pan-African Supply Chain Council. Of course, separate from that, you are the CEO of TK Global Experts, which is a procurement consulting business. So now let's talk about the Supply Chain Council. What is it? What is the mission, the intention, and why should professionals be part of the council?
I'll try to be short. So my journey signing the MOU with professional bodies in the past, our passion has always been to develop the cadres that are able to deal with the challenges in their own communities, but also prepare them for new challenges that will be coming in the future. So few procurement professionals, especially chief procurement officers, have always been saying, I've been challenging them to say, how do you contribute? Some have retired, but they still sit with that knowledge.
Yes,
so
that's true.
In African supply chain, we're trying to house that knowledge so that it's not lost in the industry.
To keep it as a knowledge center.
To keep it as a knowledge center and to share it with new people that are joining the profession, but also to support those that are still in the procurement professional now, that also have a career journey wherever they want to go. There are mentors in the council.
Okay.
And this is public and private sector, because you also realize that public sector cannot. You must also learn from private sector.
You have to.
So you have to open up the space and create synergies between the two organizations. And sharing information for me is quite critical, and that's what we are.
Maybe that's what is keeping us common.
No, of course. And you do share a lot of knowledge. You share a lot of knowledge, and you sometimes, Sebata, you'll never even get to know what is the impact of the information that you share, and it's okay, right?
I like that. Yeah.
But we must never stop trying.
True.
So that's what the Pan-African supply chain does. And of course, one of the things when we met was to share the best practices, to share good stories.
True.
And we then give awards when we find those good stories. So we annually host the Pan-African Supply Chain Awards, where we look at different projects and different individuals that are inspiring. So if we have someone else that has inspired you, you write about them, why have they inspired, what impact has it been?
Yeah.
And of course, then we reward those people who recognize them, write about them. And I'm very happy that, most of the people that we started working with as subordinates, they are now leading organizations and supply chain officers.
That's amazing.
So writing their story, their journey, how they progress there, for us, it's quite inspiring for me as well.
I think it is. I think for the most part, professionals have been looking for a place where they can find it as like a home, where we see you, you matter, we recognize you outside of your organization.
Absolutely.
Sometimes in our own companies, organization we work for, we're not really well, celebrated.
Absolutely.
But they change. If you look at it from a macro perspective, it might actually just be more.
Absolutely. So South Africa is the most unequal society. We are a developing country.
Yeah.
Supply chain is about 25% of the GDP. So we have to ensure that with that power, we impact our own communities.
Okay.
Most communities in the rural areas, in the township, they are still in the periphery of our economy.
That's true. And that's so sad,
Now, every time you go to these communities, you see poverty, but you also see resilience.
That's the thing. And that's what I wanted to ask as well. You have run a couple of enterprise and supply development programs. And from the first one you started to where you are now, do you see any transformational change in how you run the ESDs? And do you think it's something corporates can continue to do in identifying, and what will be an effective one for you?
So we were privileged to work with National Treasury on the first research that they did on the CSD, on the suppliers that are registered on the CSD, Supplier Central
Database, yeah.
And the impact of the Central Supplier Database on doing business with government. And even there, you realize very quickly that you see really that South Africa is the most unequal society. We have more than 80% of companies that are regarded as small, as small businesses.
Is this below 50 million rand?
This is below, at the time it was below 5 million.
Wow.
Hiring about 1 to 5 people.
Okay.
And but when you look at the spend, it's the other way around.
Okay.
Right? 80% of the spend of government is been spent with about 5% of companies. The rest stays outside. So they don't even get to the critical, yourself, what we've been taught in terms of the crowding model.
80-20.
You see, we even go and call consultants. We say, no, there's a problem here. We don't want many people in this quadrant.
Yes.
We want few people.
Yeah.
But that flows out the majority of people. So our strategies for developing countries must be different. And that's why our development programs must also respond to that.
Development of the country.
To development of people that are in the periphery of our economy, mainly in the rural and the township, allowing them to get to the strategic quadrants. Right? That should be the main aim. We saw, and of course, when we started, I'm sure Luena, you experienced the same thing, that it started as a tick box exercise. Now we have to...
As a regulation compliant.
Regulation, a scorecard, that's all what we... But people get tired with that, Mr. But I'm sure you have many people that says, I don't want to be part of an ESD program. If you start any development program without that end in mind, then it's going to fail.
Have you implemented something with that?
Yes, and we're still doing it. So one of the best examples, I really had a privilege of working with host communities where they see large infrastructure projects taking place in their communities. So they see trucks coming in, developing these beautiful assets that they don't even have access to. They are not even involved in the construction and the building of this asset. So part of our project was to ensure that the communities not only get involved, because it's easy to say, no, get 30%. But it's a different conversation if we say, we actually want you, because we have plans, Sebata. Right? Even government publishes their plans to say, this is what we'll be procuring for the next 12 months. It's available. It's on the website.
True.
So the ESD program must respond to that, to say there's an asset that is going to be built. There's a project, an infrastructure project that's coming. How do we help you to be ready for that particular project? Not only that you become a subcontractor, because then you're just going to increase our price, but that you start leading those projects. And eventually, because it's going to be your asset, you must be the people that then maintain it. If you don't have the skill, outsource that skill. If you have to get the skill from international source, get it in, but make sure that it's integrated with the community, that the communities take the lead, even for planning purposes. Before you build an asset, have you asked the communities what do they actually want?
But I think the problem is the time it takes sometimes to ask the community to do the planning, to do the work. Sometimes I think it can get tricky.
ESD program, it's not a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
It must be part of a strategic plan of all the organizations. So if it's not, then you're going to run into this program that says, oh, it's a March, March, it's end of the year and we haven't spent the money, and you quickly go and try and spend the money on things that do not matter. So I strongly believe that enterprise and supply development must be part of the strategic plan of any organization. Yes, it takes time. But it must never be a 1-year exercise. Nor a 2-year. At least it must be a 3-year program.
Okay, thank you. I just want now to move to what we call Procurement Folly Challenge. I need you to just think on the spot. These are the things that you know because this is your journey. You try. So, first one, favorite achievement.
Seeing the people that I developed having better position than I, doing very well in the industry, as I said, becoming chief supply chain officers of leading organizations.
Wow. Do you have one in particular that you have seen?
We have just given one, Dora Khotse, an award last year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congrats, Dora.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Dora.
All right. Second one, unexpected challenge that you would have experienced within the journey of your supply chain.
Going to meetings unprepared. I once stood up and ready for the presentation. And unfortunately, I did not have any presentation whatsoever. What was available was an incorrect one that I haven't even had rehearsed.
Oh my God.
So my biggest lesson from there, and this was at the board level, was that before we go to any meeting with supply chain people, we had what you call a dry run. And ensure that your team is there with you if you're going to present.
Embarrassed. Oh my gosh, so sorry about that.
Yeah, that was still a bit embarrassing. And of course, they chased me out.
Yeah, oh wow, that's not nice. Okay, last one. Best advice you would give to someone who's starting, literally graduate.
So as a graduate, never try to repeat the mistakes that people before you have repeated. The only way you'll know about that is by talking to them, living in their shadows, only for starters, but going beyond their shadows. So quickly get a mentor. There are many people that are willing to take you through this journey inside the organization and outside the organization. If you want to come to the Pan-African supply chain, contact me and we'll make sure that you have a mentor. In whatever industry, I can assure you that we will find, and sometimes the best mentors are actually outside your industry.
So, now speaking of mentor, just to wrap up as we get into the end, mentorship. Have you had a mentor before? And do you think that has helped you to become who you are today? And do you think mentorship actually works?
Yeah, so for my, not necessarily in terms of a supply chain mentor, just generally as management. I had mentors that helped me to deal with the new challenges that we're facing and that I was facing at the time. But the most important mentors for me has been the people that I work with. So for me, a mentor is someone that you throw stuff, get feedback, and sometimes best mentors are those that only ask questions.
But have you had a mentor?
My mentor has been the people that I've been working with. My team. I never had one. I always had.
At least the people that report to you, or people that you work with?
Even our team members. So even colleagues.
Okay.
I insist everywhere I go. I insist on feedback.
That's a good one, because we don't all take feedback.
So for me, a mentor should not only be that person that you make an appointment. No, absolutely. It can be anyone that you work with in an organization. Force it in your own life. Like,
that's an interesting concept.
Sebata, and say,
so am I?
Yeah, my ID. Of course, in many things. For example, what you are doing in the media space, I'm learning from you, right? And one of the reasons why we invited you to the Pan-African Supply Chain Council is exactly that. How can we share this message with the communities? You're already doing that. So instead of trying to duplicate, right, we are learning from you to say, how are these things done? So find mentors for different things. You can find a mentor who's just for a particular challenge that you are facing in life, and have different mentors for different things in your life.
I love that. I have not really had a mentor that I would say this is the one. But I've had people in my journey, of course, that have led me and guided me, through different aspects of my life. And one of the great leaders I met, his name is Makup. He used to run, we started with the capital venture and, investment, BE, when it was implemented and stuff. So one of the great things he said to me, which I still keep till today, was, your name is everything. In this journey and your career that you are in, your name is worth more than any luxury bag, any $1 million they can put next to you. Your name, because once your name is tainted, you are gone.
A good name is worth an expensive oil.
Yes. So make sure whatever you do, your name is good.
And in supply chain,
hard for your name.
That's very...
Absolutely. And I know those are the things that are controversial to talk about, but it is important to keep your name clean.
No,
it's ethics and conduct.
And that's why professionalization, right? We need to get rid of these people that get their hands in a cookie jar, they disappear, they rock up again in another institution.
Then, right?
So, and they move between public and private sector. And that's why the Pan-African Supply Chain Council, if we find you, we are going to deal with you.
So there is that accountability.
There must be accountability.
I love that.
And of course, they will sign the code of ethics and all
conduct,
of that. But also, we must not only deal with the rot, but let's celebrate.
Of course, so there's both ends.
Absolutely.
Love it.
We must celebrate and, of course, deal with the rot as well.
Okay. So let's talk industry, revolution, evolution, vertical transformation, and all of that. From tactical, procurement is now strategic nature in the organization. There's now automation, innovation, which now we see ChatGPT has taken over across all industries. What does this mean for supply chain?
And that's what Pan-African supply chain is doing. So we have to prepare supply chain cadre to not only deal with today's challenges, but to deal with the challenges of the future. Let me give a simple example. You hear that Woolies is going cashless as an example, right? It's here. It's not coming. We are building one of the biggest infrastructures in the country. There's so many infrastructure programs that we have to build. We have to build them. In the previous years, we'll build an infrastructure. Perhaps it will take us a year. The same infrastructure we have to build in maybe 2 or 3 months.
So are you saying there's an appreciation of the advent of technology now?
Absolutely.
And
so we need new technology.
Yes.
We need new minds. And by the way, all of these technologies, yes, these things will evolve, but individuals must be ready for that. In actual fact, people are the ones that are driving this innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And a simple example, we never have had the CSD in the country.
Oh, but now, of course,
now it
is automation, absolutely. Yeah.
And actually, you can do more with that information that we have on CSD as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So we should not, if you think about procurement, even not just supply chain, in the next few years, evaluation committees must disappear. And that's our drive, that we must take people's emotions in a technical process, right?
Okay.
When you design, there's no emotions. You design for a specific reason and for the specific outcome. Can you imagine in few years where we won't have evaluation committees? When people submit, the system does this.
Already we've got, e-sourcing platforms that are available there.
Can you think in government?
No, obviously, the biggest scheme.
Can you imagine?
Because the private sector is really far ahead, and there's
but you still have
robotic coming in,
saying no, but I want to change this. So my point is, you must be able to issue your scope, receive it internally on the system, put the evaluation criteria on the system, issue it on the system. Suppliers respond on the system. Once it's closed, you get your results. In 5 minutes, you should be able to get an award letter.
Do you think that is enabling or that is disempowering?
For me, it's enabling because there are better things that we should be doing with our time.
Okay, love it.
One of them is enterprise and supply development, or what we call supplier relationship management. That's what we'll be spending our time.
Okay. Last question, just in closing. There is sustainability has become a buzzword in the supply chain now, for obvious reasons. What are your thoughts around that?
So sustainability for us as supply chain professional is very important and is very key. For whatever projects that we are running, we must think about, and especially the communities, and many, as I said before, how do we create sustainable ecosystems in all the projects that we get involved in? It should never be about ticking the box, but it must always be about the future and the sustainability of our country.
Is it only measurable with projects, physical projects? If it's a service industry, do you think that they can still...
Of course. A project is either a product or a service. But we must think about, and not just sustainability in terms of green stuff that we use, but sustainability for me, if you look at in the country, host mining communities.
Okay. All right.
That's sustainability.
Thank you so much for coming to today's podcast.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this conversation. And just to throw in one last thing, what is your motto in life?
Lerato.
The love of people.
The love of people.
You heard that. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mampane. It was really a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. And I do have a gift for you, by the way.
Oh.
So this is a procurement planner. You might probably have seen it somewhere on the socials. I do want to gift you this to say thank you for coming. We appreciate you. When you are there on your table, please planning, make sure you write.
Of course.
This down. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So where do people get a hold of you? Supply Chain Council, quickly, your contact?
I think the easiest thing is to follow me on LinkedIn, Kamogelo Mampane. Find me on LinkedIn, and all the links to the Pan-African Supply Chain Council is there, or you can even just type Pan-African Supply Chain Council.
On any social
on any social media, on all the platforms.
So Facebook, you're there, Instagram, you're there, and...
mainly active, of course, on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. All right, guys, that wraps up our first episode of the Procurement Dialogues with myself, Lerato, and until we chat again next time. Bye.